Alright, so this is Neil. Welcome to the course. So this is a quick introduction to the course. You're going to learn how to master the human anatomy of the human figure. So if you've already gone through my Master the Human Figure course, that's excellent. If you don't know how to draw the human figure from your mind, at least to some degree, then this course might be a little advanced for you. So you might want to go ahead and brush up on the human figure, either get a couple books on it or by Andrew Loomis or something, or get my Master Human Figure course. It's only $19.95. And for a limited time it comes with a free copy of Photoshop. So anyway, check that out, see if you like it, and then do this course. You really don't want to do this course if you can't draw the human figure at all. But anyway, so we're not going to go through all the basics that I've already covered. So the prerequisite is that you do know how to draw the basics of the human figure, the proportions, all that kind of thing. If you don't know that, again, pick up a book on it or go get my other course, Master Human Figure. This is going to focus strictly on the anatomy of the human figure from different angles and stuff like that. So it's going to bring your figures to that next level. When you're done with this course, you're going to be able to draw the human figure way better than you ever did before. So if you've already done my Master Human Figure course and you mastered it and you can draw everything that course taught you how to draw from your imagination, that's awesome. This is going to bring you to that next level, to that next professional level, and your figures are going to look that much better. So it's definitely worth the wait for this course. What we're going to do, here's kind of the order and things. We're going to start with the skeleton structure. Now we're not going to get into each individual little bone, all that. We're just going to go through the important bones, and we'll particularly pay attention to the feet and hands separately. Now what's good about this is my Master Human Figure course didn't go through the head, nor the feet, nor the hands. So this will include the feet and hands in a way that you should be able to draw them. And I'll even include some basic stuff for feet and hands that way because it wasn't covered in the other course, and so I can't really say it was a prerequisite of that course. So anyway, I will also be covering the basics of the hands and the feet, but we'll go through the skeletal structure and all the bones and the muscles and stuff that make the hands look how they are. And mostly it's the bone structure that you want to pay attention to the hands. And particular things like the kneecaps and the elbow, these are things that we really want to pay attention to. The scapula, the collarbone, how it connects to the shoulders. These are all things that are really important. We'll be treating the rib cage sort of like it's a whole big thing in of itself. We'll kind of go through some of the individual ribs because it does make it important. It is sort of important when we get to some of the side muscles there, the obliques and stuff. But anyway, also, I'll be going through the actual names of things that are important to, even though you don't have to memorize them to be an artist. I'll go through them anyway because some people might be interested in that. So, but what this is not is a medical anatomy course. So we're not going to go in that kind of detail. We're just going to go through the detail that is important. I don't want to bore you. I don't want to waste a bunch of time going through little details of the skeletal structure. This is not important. We're going to deal with the bulk shapes of the bones, and that is necessary to understand and learn the human figure. Right? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll draw different angles of this human skeleton first, and then we'll break down what does it look like when the knee's bent or the elbow's bent and stuff like that. Things that are important to understand that a lot of artists make mistakes when they're drawing different poses from their imagination. It also will help you when you're drawing from reference too, because it'll help you know, okay, I know how this goes, and it'll help you draw that thing better. Right, so the first thing is to draw like a little diagram of how tall the human figure will be. So if you just pick any length you want like this, and then you want to draw some halfway point. So about here, and the halfway point doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I like the legs to be just a tad bit longer than the torso. You don't have to do that. It's up to you. Draw another halfway point here. This would be like where the knees go. So the knees are going to fit somewhere in this area. Another halfway point here. This halfway point is kind of like the bottom of the sternum for the skeleton, somewhere around there. And then if you do another halfway point up here, you're going to basically get the size of the skull. Right, and I'm going to lower this halfway point just a tad bit here because it's not quite right, something like that. And then the halfway point between here and here is going to be about where the elbows are. The wrist will be right about here, and then the hands will come down like this. Right, so it's good to know the proportions of things. I'm not going to go into great detail about the proportions because, like I said, that's something you should know already. I've covered that before. I'm going to kind of start drawing the basic shape of the skeleton, or of the skull, sorry. And so I'm just going to kind of come like this, and then come down like this. We're not going to get into really big detail for the skeleton in this particular view. So when we get into more detail of the skeletons, when we're dealing with the skeleton on its own, when we zoom into the skeleton, and also if you've already got my heads and faces course, and you kind of already know the skull from the different angles and the muscles of the face and all that, so that's gonna be kind of repetitive for you. Now what's important here is that you have a pretty long neck, and we're not going to really get into the details of the spine because it's not important for figure drawing. That is each individual little vertebrae and stuff like that. But what is important is this particular spot right here. This is the part we're gonna focus on with some details. So you have this kind of actually I'm not going to do it like that. I'm going to shape it like this. So you have this kind of shape like this. And then it kind of comes down like so, and then it kind of comes like this. The next part is continue, that's the sternum. The next part is continue down with the spinal cord, or the spine, however you want to refer to it. Come all the way down almost to the halfway point. About like so. Next is we're going to have the bottom of the sacrum or coccyx. It depends on what part you're drawing here at this particular point right here. We're going to just kind of come out like this with it for now. So that's all you need to pay attention to for this particular point right there. We're going to come back up here and visit this area right here where the tip of the manubrium is. So this part here is the sternum, and then this part here is the manubrium, and this is where your collarbone connects. And the collarbone kind of has a shape from this front view where it kind of comes like this, and then kind of turns in, and then to the side. We also want to get a general idea of the width of the skeleton. So the width of the skeleton is going to come out to about here and here. So you can follow the T rule here where we make this kind of cross. And that way you kind of have the points where your end points are going to be at. We'll go into more detail with these bones in a little bit. So for now we're just going to draw it like this. Because we're drawing kind of small because we're drawing the whole entire skeleton. But when we zoom in, then we'll be able to get a better view of what it is we're drawing. What's important to memorize about the collarbone, and I probably should shape it a little bit differently than this. So let me go ahead and go like this. Sometimes it's better if you have the end shape first, so you know the end shapes are going to be here, and they're going to kind of come up like this. Sometimes it's good to have those end shapes there first and then come out with about almost halfway, about like so. Then you kind of dip in down here like this. What's important to memorize about the collarbone is that it attaches here, and then it's attached to the scapula, also known as the shoulder blade. I'm just going to kind of shape it like this. You have this top rib bone as well that kind of comes around like this. And I think this is an important one to know, especially when we look at it from the top view. Actually, it's going to be a little bit bigger than that. It's going to be almost halfway, almost as half as big as the collarbone. Now you don't have to memorize all of this if you don't want to. I'll tell you the parts that are important to memorize. The important part you want to memorize is the collarbone. That's important. You can just memorize this whole entire shape as the sternum if you want to. That's fine. You don't have to like call this its separate name if you don't want to. The spinal cord, which comes all the way down, or the spine, which comes all the way down. That's important. And then you're gonna want to memorize obviously the hips and how they're shaped. In this case, the pelvis bone. And so there's the right and left pelvis. We're going to kind of draw them like this. We're not going to draw them too complicated, but we'll draw them pretty close to how they look. We're kind of simplifying the skeleton because there's no need to draw it so detailed unless you actually just want to draw a skeleton for whatever reason. That's fine if you want to draw a skeleton for whatever reason. So keep in mind the shape, they kind of come out like this, and then they kind of come in. I'm going to kind of draw the loose shape here first, and then we'll draw more details. So there's the loose shape first. I'm going to come in and kind of start getting rid of some lines here. Okay, so that's the loose shape first. We'll kind of draw where it attaches. The other parts that you want to memorize is obviously the overall shape of the arm and legs, and particularly the elbow joints and the knee joints and the ankle joints and the wrist joints. Those are really important bone parts to memorize. They'll make a huge difference in your figures when you're drawing them. Right, so we'll just do, like I said, the basic shape on the inside here. We're not going to get into all the details because the hip bone is quite detailed, or the pelvic bones. And we're just going to kind of come down like this. This is all that's really important. Really, it's just this main outer shape here that's important because this part right here, it pulls out sometimes, and you'll see this bone right here, that part of the pelvic bone sticking out on the hips of, especially of females. So that part's important. There's this kind of back part here, and we don't need to memorize that though. Then there's a part in the back that's important to memorize too, or at least somewhat important. And it kind of comes around like so. Okay. Where this attaches to the scapula is important too, and that'll be more viewable from the top view. We'll go into it more from the top view and also the side view, or excuse me, the back view. We're going to draw the general shape of the scapula here as it goes back there. It's good to memorize how, the shape of the scapula, and actually it kind of curves in even more than that. It's good to memorize the shape of the scapula from the front view too. It helps solidify something about the scapula in your mind when you're drawing the back. So, draw loosely at first. And then after you see the lines you want, you come in and you can make them harder. I guess I should probably make this side also thin. Make sure you don't copy and paste, when you're drawing. You're actually drawing both sides because it's important, because when you're drawing from your memory, you'll be like, what does this side look like? Like, it's weird, but your brain, it knows what one side looks like but not the other, so you kind of have to memorize both sides or your brain will have difficulty with it. Now, I can't say that's true for everyone. It's definitely true for me, though. Right, so this part is important to memorize, this part's important to memorize, and this section here is important to memorize. But all these little details in here aren't important. It's just this main shape here. This is what's important to memorize. That main kind of almost heart shape. That part is important to memorize. The scapula is the scapula is important to memorize, and also the collarbones, and then where it attaches to the sternum. That's all important to memorize. So at this stage, what you're going to want to do is, because you're going to want to do this in stages. If you try to memorize too much information at once, it just becomes too difficult. So just memorize these major points for right now. Go ahead and draw this right here, what we have done so far, and memorize this. So this is the unique exercise program that I use and that works for people. It works on my other courses. It works fantastically, actually. It will drastically increase how fast you're able to draw better. If you skip the exercises, you're not going to get much benefit. That is, if all you do is watch the courses and then just kind of draw here and there and don't do the exercises as I detail them out to do them, you're not going to benefit that much from the course. If you want to benefit from this course, if you want to be drawing differently 2 weeks from now, like very differently 2 weeks from now, then you're going to want to do the actual exercises. Now, the skeletal exercises aren't nearly as important as the muscle exercises, but still, there's certain parts you want to memorize. So those are the parts I'm kind of focusing on that you really need to memorize because they are going to make a difference in your human figures. And the main things is the elbow, the knees, collarbone, scapula, and hips. And those are so important to memorize. But anyway, so what you want to do, the exercise goes like this. You follow along with the video and you draw what we have drawn so far. Follow the video exactly and draw exactly what I did, how I did it. After you've done that, then what you want to do is you want to go back and draw it again. Keep drawing it from the reference. So after you, for example, you can pause the video right now, hit print screen on your keyboard, paste it into your program, then you have a reference of this image here that we don't have to watch the video again. But the first time you want to follow along with the video and do it. And then draw from the reference. That is from the reference you just made. That is, you pause the video, you hit print screen on your keyboard a couple times, went into Photoshop, whatever program you use, and you pasted it, or you just pause it and then draw on paper or paint on paper. Whatever medium you're using, that's fine. Most of my courses work for any medium. So if you're drawing with paper, just simply pause the video and look at it and draw what you see right here. I'm just going to kind of fix the shape of this a little bit. I'm kind of a perfectionist sometimes, and some things just irritate me. So, now once you're able to draw this and it looks proper from reference, you're able to draw it and it looks like this, or very, very similar to this, and it's only after you're able to draw this from reference to where it looks very close to this that you should move on to the next part. The next part is then to try to draw it from memory. Draw it the best you can from memory. Follow the formula. The formula helps you draw it from memory, knowing that you have the spinal cord that comes down here. Then you have, first it's the measurement points. That's important. Then you have the spinal cord comes down here. You draw the parts. The hip bone comes in here. The shape of the hip, about where it fits in. It's about the same size as the skull. You have your scapula that comes down to about where the sternum is, maybe a little bit past the bottom of the sternum. So you want to memorize and draw in that way because the formulated way will help you memorize how everything looks and where everything goes. Do the best you can. You're probably going to get stuck, you're probably going to forget something, but just keep pushing forward, do the best you can, draw it from memory the best you can. You're going to make mistakes most likely, that's fine. Then go back, look at the reference, and compare and go, okay, what kind of mistakes did I make? If you just absolutely get totally stuck and you just don't know what to do next, you're like, I just don't even know what to draw next, you're just totally stuck, then go back and look at the reference for a second, and then go back and continue drawing from your mind. You want to keep doing this, so this will take you several times to master this and get this down from your memory. Don't cheat, don't copy and paste, don't trace. Make sure you draw each side from your mind. You're going to see what I'm talking about. After you draw from reference a bunch of times and you feel pretty confident drawing it, when you go to draw from your mind without any references, make sure you don't have anything. Don't cheat. Don't have anything out in front of you that you can scan at. Alright, so then you want to continue doing that. So continue going back and forth like that, where you draw it the best you can from your memory and then draw it again from reference. This is important. After you draw it a few times from memory, go back and draw it again from reference. I know it seems crazy, it's like, why do I have to draw so much? But that's what it takes to get better, to advance, especially to advance in such a short amount of time that I want you to advance at, that my course can get you to advance at. You have to put the work in. Work is necessary. Look, if you want to be a better baseball player, do you think you can do it by just watching baseball? No, you can't. Do you think you can do it by watching baseball tutorials? You'll get a little bit better because it's giving you knowledge, but until you go out and you actually practice that knowledge and perfect it, you're not going to get better. If you want to be a better pitcher, you can watch all the tutorials on pitching you want and all the techniques you want and get all that knowledge you want. You'd be like, hey, I'm the most knowledgeable pitcher in the world, but you're not a good pitcher yet. To become a good pitcher, you have to apply that knowledge. You have to go out there and practice, put the practice in, throw the ball, practice that curve, practice that curve, practice that curve. So you have the knowledge, but you have to practice that knowledge to perfect it to where you get better and better and better and throw a faster and faster ball or throw a better and better curve ball. The same thing goes with anything you want to get better at. If you want to be a good piano player, you can't just learn the theory of piano playing and watch a bunch of tutorials on YouTube and buy a bunch of courses and watch them and expect to go be able to play Mozart. You have to put your fingers on the keyboard for hours and hours and hours and hours and practice and practice and practice. The same thing goes with art. You're not just born with this knowledge. You're not just born with going, okay, I'm going to draw a human being from my imagination. Unless you're some kind of prodigy or something that has like a photographic memory and you remember every single pose that you ever looked at in your life and you can just draw it from memory or something. But if you're not one of those prodigies, you have to put the time in. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't one of those prodigies. He had to put the time in. He had to learn these techniques I'm showing you. He had to do the exercises. He had to practice, practice, practice to get to the point where he can draw from his mind. So that's what it takes. It takes that kind of dedication. So put the dedication in and you will surpass your peers and you will have a portfolio that will land you a good art job. And in fact, what I'm working on, all the courses I've been coming out with are so that eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all my courses on one USB disk. Instead of CD, which can scratch, or DVD, which can scratch, I'm going to have it on flash drives. That way it can last like forever, right? And then you can, copy it to your computer or put it to another flash drive, whatever. I just think it's a much better. I don't even know why companies haven't done this yet. Why haven't they started just sending software on flash drives? Flash drives are so cheap now. Why not just do it that way instead of on a DVD, which scratches and so forth? Anyway, that's what I'm going to start doing. But I will have packages available, maybe even downloadable packages available to where you have all the courses in one big package, or you buy them over time, however you want to do it. The point is that when you go through all the courses, you'll be able to build a portfolio. And I'm going to have a particular course telling you what you want to put in your portfolio, and that's going to be able to land you any kind of art job you want. So anyway, do the exercise. It's very important. I'm sorry I ranted like that, but it's super duper important. So make sure that after you draw from reference, wait a little bit, wait a good 5. My cats are going crazy. Not sure if you guys can hear that, but the cats are just going crazy. Right, so draw this from reference, wait 5-10 minutes or so, maybe even 20 minutes, and then draw it again from memory. You want to keep doing that exercise, going back and forth until you can draw this from memory. It might take you a while, but the more you use this technique, this particular exercise method, then you'll get better and better at drawing. You can apply this to anything. You can do your own self-studies. You can go online and you can look up the arm muscle, or you can just look up a car and learn how to draw a car, and then just learn one little part of the car, like how the wheels attach to the bottom frame of the car, and just memorize that from a certain angle and do this exercise where you draw it and then you draw it from reference, you draw it from memory, draw it from reference, draw it from memory, draw it from memory, until you can draw it from memory without making any mistakes and you feel comfortable doing it. Wait a few days, try it again. It's still there, it's solid, it stayed in you. Because just because you can get to the point where, ooh, I waited 20 minutes and I drew it from memory, yay, you're not necessarily done. Wait a couple days, try to draw it from memory again. You might find that, uh-oh, I forgot something, or I made a couple mistakes. It hasn't entered your long-term memory yet. That's okay. Just do the exercises a few more times, a few more days, and then eventually a couple of days will go by and you'll be able to draw it from memory. It's no big deal. Make sure you can draw this from memory before you move on. There's really no point even moving on unless you just want to watch the video first before you do exercises. That's fine. But make sure you go back and you do this exercise and master this before you move on. Don't try to draw the whole skeleton from memory. Master this first, then move on. And the next part you're going to move on to will be how the arms and legs attach. Right, so where the arm, and what we're going to call, well, actually we'll go through the names too, so the arm bone, or we'll go through the proper name. And so it's called the humerus bone. And then we'll get to the 2 bottom bones, because the bottom part of the arm, the forearm, has 2 bones. And one is the radius and the other is the ulna. The outer one is the radius, the inner one is the ulna, at least when the thumbs are facing out. So we'll go through that in a second. But the first thing we're going to draw is the humerus bone. So there is no shoulder bone, right? The shoulder consists of the humerus bone right here. It has this first, we're going to draw like little circles first. Draw them very lightly because we'll kind of shape them a little bit better, but for now we'll draw little circles. And they fit right in here, they fit right into where the scapula has this kind of round edge right here, and that allows that bone to kind of move around almost like it's in a socket, sort of. And then right here where this comes down, and so there's like ligaments and stuff, and this allows us to move around like it's in a free-floating socket. That is your shoulder. Your shoulder consists of the collarbone, where it attaches to the scapula, and then this part of the humerus. Those 3 bones make up like your shoulder. This right here, this bone structure is so important to memorize because it's going to help you when you draw the actual muscle onto here, which kind of looks like this. This is the deltoid. So it kind of wraps around like that. Comes down. Dang it, man. I don't know why comes like this. From the front view, that's about what you can see of it. Right, we'll get into that a little bit, but it's going to help you, and actually doesn't even go that far outside the bone, but that's the basic shape of it. Next thing I want to do before we define that is kind of come down to how far down this bone is, how long this bone is, to about where it goes to the elbows, right? Remember I said you had this halfway mark. If you can still kind of see that mark there, that's about where the bone kind of stops, right around there. So a little bit above the hip bone. And so it's like right about here. Right, so like that. Now we're going to shape the bone. So the bone it has thick and it comes down thin like so. And I'm going to, you know what, I think I'm just going to write Wacom and be like, none of your freaking things are working for me. Help me figure this out. You know, none of their. I've tried so many different drivers, and none of them are working, and I don't get it why. And I paid $1,000 for this damn thing, and it should work. You know, so I'm just gonna tell them. So this is kind of how the top part looks, like this, and it comes down. Then the bone's not very thick, and it comes down out here, and it gets wide again. It has a wide part here. Now, how we're viewing the arm is the arms are turned out toward us, so the palms are out facing us, so the thumbs are pointing out away from the character. Just so you know before we draw what we're doing. It has another part that comes like this over here, and so this is the basic shape of the bone. So this is why you have these two parts here that stick out in the arm. When someone the back side of the arm, you'll have these two little bones. Sometimes you can see the edges of those bones sticking out on the arm. And sometimes, if you even look at your own arm and like bend it in a 90-degree angle, you can kind of sometimes see those two little knots that are sticking out on each side of the elbow. We can't get to the elbow yet. The elbow's on the back side of the arm, so we will get into the elbow when we view the back side of the character. It's important that you draw the bone from both sides. Oops, it comes down like this. Dang it. Okay, there we go. One thing to practice for fluidity and smoothness, and remember to also draw this other side here so you know. That way you memorize, when you draw both sides like this, you memorize, especially when you do it from memory, you kind of memorize how things look from both sides, and it helps you see the object more in 3D. Another exercise that would be really helpful is if you try to, this is after we get to the muscle part of the character. Once you start getting to the muscles, which we'll do after the skeleton, then you want to go ahead and apply that knowledge and try to sculpt the human figure. And I might even include that in this course, just a quick little sculpting of a figure. Maybe I'll speed it up or something. I'm not sure yet. I'm not even know if I'm going to include that yet, so it might be a bonus. But because doing that will help you tremendously. It'll just increase your knowledge that much more to sculpt the human figure. So the bones look something like this here. Right, so that's the basics of the bones. You don't really get into too much detail. Like I said, unless you actually want to draw a skeleton, which maybe you do, then you want to go ahead and look at some references of skeletons whenever you want to draw one. I'm just adding a little bit of shading so that kind of goes into the background a little bit, like so. Right, so again, that's how the humerus bone looks. And so after you've mastered this first part, which you've got down now, so you're able to draw that from your memory, and you're able to do it, even 3 or 4 days later, you're able to draw it from your memory. What's important is it's kind of like language and math and stuff and chess. It's something you have to keep doing. You have to keep doing your exercises periodically. So you don't want to like not draw for a month. You want to because you'll start forgetting things. So you want to make sure you're drawing the figure, once a week or so. Once you master and get it down, you can draw it. And then just make sure you just do exercise about once a week, and or do daily warm-ups or something. Just make sure you don't stop drawing, because you don't want to lose all that time and effort you put into it. I mean, it comes back a lot quicker than the first time, but still, it's better if you just keep doing it. Right. So after you've memorized that part there, then you want to go ahead and memorize these two bones here, or rather, it's one bone, but you want to memorize drawing it from both sides from memory. And so the humerus bone. So now you want to do is draw this whole thing, and so this you already know how to draw from memory, so you draw that first, and then add on these two bones, and they're the same bone, but it's on each side. Make sure you draw them first from references a few times till it looks right, and then draw it from memory. And don't just like go take one of your old sketches. Redraw the whole thing from scratch. It shouldn't take you very long, and then add on the humerus bones. Keep doing that back and forth from reference without reference, from reference without reference, until you can draw it to where it looks right. You draw it from memory to where you don't make any mistakes, where you know, okay, this curve's here, this curve's here, all just comes natural. This kind of more blocky part is on this side. So the humerus bone, the more blocky part is on the inner side when the arms are facing out, palm toward us, like that. And that's important little thing to memorize. I should have mentioned, but I didn't. Now I mentioned it. Okay. Once you get that down and that's memorized, you're able to draw this whole thing now from memory. Then you want to move on to the radius and ulna. So when the palm is facing out toward us, then the radius is on the outside and the ulna is on the inside. So there's two muscles or two bones, and those bones twist and overlap each other, which is an important thing to know because it actually changes the structure of the forearm muscles when the arm twists certain ways. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of have a mark down here for how long these are going to be. They're going to be about the same length as the humerus bone to about here. And then we're going to kind of put a general idea of how big the hands are going to be, including the fingers. So you'll have the general square here. Remember, the hand is about as big as the skull, almost. So the hand with the fingers is about like that tall. So just keep that in mind when drawing this is the basic shape of the hand. I'm just going to kind of go like this. That's where we'll fit the skeletal structure into. The thumbs are going to be facing out like that. And that's about right. So I just want to make sure they're not too low or too long. Right, so how these bones work, it's very simple. You have one bone that attaches here. We'll get into more detail when we zoom in on bones and draw them, more like how they attach, like with muscles and ligaments and stuff like that. The bone kind of comes out like this, and it kind of dips in, almost has an S curve, and comes out, attaches to the hand. Right, that's how the radius looks. About like that, and then it has a thicker part at the end. And I'm going to go ahead. And it has a little bit of a scoop on it, like that. Right, the radius, that's the radius. The ulna kind of attaches right here, or kind of fits on. It kind of fits up over this bone, but this isn't really all that important. Just important that you have these two bones. Comes down and attaches here. It doesn't get that thick. It stays very thin. And I drew too many lines, so I need to go back and clean it up. It's kind of hard when drawing this small sometimes. Right? We're just going to kind of go like that. They actually should be a little closer together, so I'm going to redraw this bone. Because it doesn't quite look like that. Sometimes you'll make mistakes, that's fine. I just did. It's more close like this, but still follows that same shape. It doesn't come out. It's only big right there, then it has the same thinness, like that. Okay. Next, we're going to draw it from the other side. That way we memorize both sides. Right now what I'm trying is to capture my stroke with one smooth stroke, or capture my line with one smooth stroke. Again, this kind of comes in, and it comes out. And gets a little bit thicker at the end here. Okay, like so. So the next exercise we want to do is draw this whole part again, because you have that memorized now. You can draw that from memory, and you feel confident drawing from memory without making mistakes. Then you want to add these bones here. So you want to add the radius and the ulna, and keep in mind that the radius is the kind of S-curved one, and it's on the outside when the thumbs are facing out. When the thumbs go in, it crosses over, and we'll get into that. this now twist over that bone, and they twist over each other. Right, so do the same exercises where you go back and forth and back and forth. You draw it from reference, draw it from memory, draw it from reference, you draw it from memory until you can draw it from memory and you feel confident about it. Now you can draw this whole thing from memory, which includes the little placement for the hands. Knowing the placement for the hands really does help draw the hands at their proper length. Now we're not going to get into is all the little individual bones right here in the hand. I don't think that's important to drawing the human figure. So instead, we're just going to memorize the bulk shape of them. There's one shape here like this, one shape here like this. It's a very thin set of bones, and then you have a couple bigger bones which fit in right here and right here. Right, now once you got that down, then it's when we start adding the fingers. And the fingers, so the hand actually, or the fingers if you want to call them that, well obviously fingers, but the whole hand. But anyway, the fingers, all the first set of bones, so it actually has 4 sets of bones. The first set of bones is your metacarpal bones. They all fit right about here. And then the next set of bones is your proximal phalanges, and they come right about here like this. We're going to draw them here in just a bit. We'll go in more detail when we draw the hand too. Alright, the next set, which is much smaller, is the middle phalanges. And then finally you have the tips, also called the distal phalanges. They're very, very tiny at the very, very tip. Anyway, so with the hand, we're going to have to zoom in to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of erase a lot of this here. Again, we will go into more detail about the hand though. So first you have this first bone here, the first bone of the thumb. Then you have the second, like so, and then you have the tip. So one, it's kind of longer, kind of has a bonier part right here. We'll get, like I said, we're going to get into more detail of the hand, so for now we're just going to keep it very basic, just knowing that there's the parts. There's that part there, and then you have this slightly thinner part. So there's like that, and then you have finally have the very little tip. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. And again, this might be kind of hard to see. Don't worry about it. We're going to get into more details, like I said. When we zoom in on some bones, especially the hands and feet, we'll draw these in more detail. For now, just know you have the 4 parts. So 1, 2, 3, tip. Pinky is the smallest. 1, 2, 3, tip. And so really you're just kind of drawing, and actually the fingers should be a little bit longer than that. Overall, I think I might have drawn his arms a little too long, and so that's, some people do have longer arms, but I don't like it, so I'm going to fix it. I'm just going to simply take the arm and shorten it and make it a little bit more thin, like so. Do the same thing for this side. And I kind of had a feeling it was a little too long when I was drawing it, and I should have just stuck with, the points where I know where everything goes. So, sometimes I make mistakes, it happens. Let's go ahead and make the fingers longer. I do apologize for showing that incorrectly. So you have the first part. We're not even going to really bother with how they get bigger right here and stuff. We'll do that when we zoom in. For now, we'll just know that they consist of 4 parts. So we'll learn it in stages, and then refine. The middle finger is a little bit longer. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the pinky is about like that. So there we go. Some people might even have longer fingers than that, and so just keep that in mind. These are actually quite short fingers now that I'm looking back. It's because I'm zoomed in. When you zoomed in, sometimes it's hard to draw everything in the proper length. So sometimes it's helpful if you draw zoomed out, but it's hard to draw the hand zoomed out with how small I'm drawing everything. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the middle finger will go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll just draw the pinky in one shape like that for now. So that hand looks a little bit better, a little bit, proper, more proper length. So I'm just going to kind of extend these all down a little bit farther. But just know that they consist of 4 parts, and we'll get more, like I said, we'll get more detail to hand, but they kind of go like this. You have the longer part of the bone, and it kind of comes out to a thicker part that kind of goes like this. Then you have the next part, which is kind of wide and goes thinner. And then that connects to another bone here, which it goes even thinner. And finally, the tip bone. So that's kind of more of the shape. But like I said, we'll get when we draw the hands and learn the hands, we'll get into that. Right, so now what you want to do is you want to do the next set of exercises, which I'm sure you already know what it is. And that is you want to draw this entire thing. You don't want to just take an old drawing and add this onto it. You want to draw the whole thing in memory. So you already have all this right here memorized, or rather, well, yeah, we'll just say you already have all this right here memorized. Or no, you already have all this memorized, right? Sorry about that. I think it's the hands now. So you draw all that from memory and then add the hands by memory. And keep drawing from reference on reference until you have it. This is really simple because we haven't gone into details about the hands yet. And then you'll be able to draw this whole thing from memory, and then you're ready to move on. The next thing we want to draw is the femur bone. And the femur bone is interesting how it attaches. So what you want to memorize first is the general shape of it. You know that the kneecaps are going to be about down in this area here. So I'm just going to kind of draw some circles for now, some target points. For me, it's really good to draw target points. It helps me draw better. So hopefully it'll help you draw better too. Draw this kind of shape that comes out like this. Do this really lightly though. This is just a guideline. Come out like this and then come down. Understanding this particular quality of the skeleton is going to help you draw the skeleton that much, or draw the figure that much better. This little piece of knowledge right here, understanding this right here, is going to bring your character level or your figure drawing to a whole new level. Once you just memorize this concept right here with the femur bone and how it attaches to the hip bone, this shape here, this is going to help you so much. And when we learn how the muscles attach, you're going to realize why this bone structure is so important to memorize. And you're gonna be like, oh, and I'm telling you, when you draw the figure, it's just gonna make things so much cooler. Right, so I'm gonna go back in and kind of erase these guidelines now. Not totally erase them, but erase them enough to where they're hard to see. And then we'll go through what the femur bone looks like. So first thing is it attaches here, and attaches kind of to the top, and then kind of back around to the back. But that's not all that important. Just know that it has kind of a bigger shape here. It kind of comes out thick and up here like so. So it has a shape kind of like that. Then it comes down toward the knee. It actually forms part of your knee. You have this kind of bigger part that comes out like this kind of blocky part right here, like so. And you have this not so blocky part like this. That's the basic shape. Now if we draw it, actually these landing points kind of almost serve as your kneecap, but not quite. Well, first we'll draw it without the kneecap there. This bone kind of comes up like this, the humerus bone, and down like that. Right, so that's how it looks. Like so. Do the same thing for the other side. Just kind of have this bulgier part here. It kind of comes down like so. Has a little lip here. You might think that learning the skeleton is not important, and you might even want to skip it, but you don't want to. I mean, you might think you want to skip it, but don't do it. You don't want to skip the skeletal structure. I'm telling you, it will help your figure drawings tremendously. Just trust that it will help tremendously, and do the exercises. Don't think, whatever, skeletal muscle, skeleton's not that important. It's important. Don't skip this part. The success of my course relies on you trusting me. So if you want to get better, you want your figure drawings to come to a whole new level, then you got to trust me that I'm giving you proper information and the proper exercises to do that will get you better. Right, so the next part is the kneecap. The kneecap kind of looks like this. So it's round like this, sort of on the top, and it comes down, and it comes down here like so. So it's almost like a triangle shape. And we're going to get more into the knees from side views and also up close views and bent views. When the knee bends, what happens and why it looks the way it does. And that's really going to help you when you're drawing the legs and you're drawing people sitting down and things like that. It's gonna blow you away, just like the knowledge that you're going to gain from that. Right, so that's about what we have so far. So now you want to do the same thing again. I know it sounds tedious and, oh, I don't want to do it. Sounds like work. It is work. To get better, it takes work. And just force yourself to do it. Treat it like homework. So now what you want to do, and this thumb right here should be longer too. You want to go ahead and draw this whole thing now. So start from scratch. Don't just add these bones onto previous drawing. You could do that too, but what you would definitely want to do for exercise is draw this whole entire thing now. The repetitiveness makes all this other knowledge that much more easier to access in your brain, and it builds those neural networks that much stronger. The more you do it, the more information you have in your brain to access, and the easier it is to draw this from your memory. So go ahead and draw the entire thing, and that includes these parts here. Of course, these parts are new, so that's when you're going to start maybe feeling a little bit stumbled and be like, how exactly does it look? And that's fine that you feel a little bit stumbled at first. Just go ahead and push through and do the best you can, and draw from reference a couple of times, draw from memory, draw from reference, draw from memory, until you can draw this entire thing from memory, and it looks good and everything's good. The next part we're going to add on, and the last part will be the ribs. The next part we're going to add on is the bottom portion of the leg. Right, and the lower part of the bones consist of the bigger bone, which attaches here, which kind of makes it part of your knee. You can kind of consider it as part of your knee. It's the under part of your knee. It's the lower part of your leg. When your leg bends, this is the part that sticks out, and this is going to be really important to know how when this bends, how it looks from the side view and front view and stuff. But anyway, it consists of your tibia, which is the larger bone, and then of your fibia, or fibula, which is a smaller bone, and that goes kind of, it doesn't go behind it, it's right on the side of it, it's really tiny. And then you have your bigger bone, which kind of comes down like so. And also, some people call it the shin bone, and it comes down. We'll get into it here in just a second, but I just wanted to kind of show basically what it's going to look like so you know what the two bones we'll be drawing. So first we'll draw the tibia, which is the larger bone. I want to zoom in just a little bit here. So it kind of has a shape like this. It kind of comes. The whole thing has a three-dimensional shape to it. So if you want to imagine a three-dimensional shape coming behind this other bone, because this bone attaches onto that bone, so the two bones are kind of attaching on top of each other. So if you were to imagine you have one cylinder like this, and then you have another cylinder, and they're kind of stacked on top of each other. That's kind of how you want to think about it. Right, so it kind of has a shape like this, kind of comes out like that, and then it starts tapering in, like so. I want to have a target point, which is going to be down here, where it's attached to the foot. It's about the same length as the humerus, and about the same length as your femur. Femur being this top bone here. So I want to come down to my just doing some light sketchy lines there. Notice, guys, sketchy, I don't mean chicken scratch. I don't mean where it's like individual lines overlapping. It's just one smooth line, and you do it very lightly. And then this bone kind of comes up like this. It's kind of shaped like that, where it attaches to the foot. So it's shaped like that. And so when you, I should probably go ahead and erase these other lines that I made. It's important to memorize that this bone here, the kneecap, it doesn't overlap much. It stays mostly up here. So most of it is on the femur bone. Like that. It just overlaps a little bit. That one's even, a little too far down. It just barely covers this part right here. And it comes almost all the way to the top. That's definitely something you want to memorize. And you want to get it right. So you don't want to memorize that incorrectly. So make sure you memorize that correctly. Right, so that's that bone there. The next is the fibula. We want to draw it right to the side. It kind of connects to the back, and we'll get into that from the back side, but for now, we're just going to kind of draw this, and it's going to come about like that. And in. So it's going to go behind. Sorry about that, my cat knocked over my monitor. It's going to go behind this bone right here, the tip part of that bone, and it's going to kind of come down to the side here, like so. All this is important because it helps you. This becomes like your ankle bone, and this becomes your other ankle bone. And you have, this kind of sticks out up here more like this, so it's like that, and then lower. So you kind of have this angle to your ankle bones, right? That this one sticks out, that this one's higher, this one's lower. So you get that kind of arch to the foot, which if you've gone through my Master the Human Figure course, then you know, and now you know why it's like that, because it's how the bones are. Right, we're going to draw the same thing for the other side. We're going to kind of come off like this, come down, come wide a little bit like so, then come in, and then we're going to come almost straight down. When we draw from the side view, you're going to see something really interesting about the legs and the bone and the skeleton. That should be pretty revolutionary for you if you haven't already kind of figured it out from my other course or from other studies you've done. So remember, this is kind of high like that, creating that ankle. Right, and then remember, this kind of comes up like this, connects here, has a little point that comes out. That's where the foot kind of sits into. You can already kind of see the arch of the foot. If you've done my Mastering Human Figure course, you know when I teach how to draw the legs, you come down, with the muscles. You kind of have the calves, and then it comes down. This is like from the front view. Then you have the ankle, the other ankle. Remember, I teach you to draw that curve, and when you come out with the foot from that front view, now you know why it's done that way. It's because of the underlying bone structure. So there's a reason to it. All right, next thing is we'll draw the fibula, which will be in the back here. It's on the side, but it kind of goes to the back. And like so. It's actually more straight than it doesn't have much of a curve. It actually comes down more straight like this. Disappears behind there. Then you have that part that makes your ankle. Right, so there we go. So now for your next exercise, you're going to want to draw this entire skeletal structure that you see right now. You're going to want to draw all this from memory. Of course, when you get to this part here, you're going to, well, first draw just this part here and here on one of your previous drawings. So when your previous drawings are like this, And that came up a little bigger than that one. I want to fix it, sorry. I'm just such a perfectionist sometimes, and it annoys me. Okay, so you want to go ahead and just add these onto one of your previous drawings for now. Draw from reference a few times. First, you always want to draw while you're watching the video. So draw following the video, and then draw from reference a few times until it looks correct. Don't stop drawing from reference until it looks like this, until it looks correct. Once it looks correct, then start drawing from your mind. Don't start drawing from your mind until you can draw from reference to where it looks correct. Because what's going to happen is if you try to move forward, you're going to start developing bad habits with your drawing. So don't move forward until you can draw it from reference, and then you want to start drawing from your mind. And then go back and forth until you can draw this whole entire thing from your mind. Start from scratch and do the whole entire thing from your mind, and it all looks good, and then you're ready to move on. And by this point you're probably pretty excited because you're like, hey, maybe never really drawn a skeleton before, and it's like, hey, I'm kind of like drawing a skeleton, it looks pretty cool. And next we'll get into the feet here. What we're going to do is we're going to draw one foot where it's flat on the ground coming toward us. There'll be some foreshortening, and the next foot we'll draw facing down so that you get more of an idea of how long the bones are. So as if he's pointing his toes down, floating in midair or something. Right, so the first part is you have this part of the bone, you have this bone here. We're not going to go into the names of these bones because there's too many of them. It's really not important. We'll just kind of go through the general structure. So you have your big toe, which is on the inside. It's going to consist of one bone right here, which is going to be overlapped by the other bone, which will be here. And we're going to go through these names actually. Right, so the first set is the metatarsal bones, and that's that first set of bones we'll be drawing, kind of like similar to the fingers. And then we'll draw the proximal phalanges, and then finally the tips. Well, you have the distal phalanges, which is the case with the big toe, but all the other toes have your middle phalanges. The big toe doesn't. The big toe is the only one that doesn't have the middle phalange. So it's kind of the same as the fingers, but the big toe is a little different. Right, so you draw this first bone then. And I might want to draw like a kind of a, let's say, just a little bit of a guide. It's going to be a lot foreshortened, so it's going to be kind of like to here like that. So I kind of can draw that basic foot shape and then fit the bones into that. The first one is going to be the longest, so it's going to come down to about here. We'll get into more detail with the foot. Mainly when we're drawing like the muscles and everything onto the foot, that's when we'll get into more detail with the foot. Then you have this bone here. I'm going to draw it with the curves. And finally you have that tip part of the bone here. And it's going to be kind of flat like this. Again, we'll draw more detail of the foot when we get into. For now, I'm just going to kind of draw that back heel. It's going to be back there like that. Anyway, it's not the heel, it's actually called the calcaneus, but anyway. I'm not sure if that's even how it's pronounced, to be honest. Like I said, I'm not really big on the names. They're not very important to me. I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, and the fourth one will be down here somewhere like that. Just kind of have a guide, a general guide. And I kind of want to come out with like 1, 2, 3, 4. So a general guideline to where the bones are going to be. So again, you have the first bone, which is bigger, and it kind of has a shape like this. Then you have the second bone, which is going to be smaller, and it kind of goes thinner, like that. It has a thicker, thinner part. I can't get too detailed because I'm drawing so tiny right now. Again, we will draw more zoomed in and draw a larger version of the foot, which will have more detail. But for now, just know that these are the parts. And then finally, the tip. One, and finally 2. Like so. Oh, come on. And then 3, and then the tip. This one is starting to be over shown where you can't really see it. It's like it's being overlapped by the other 2, 3, 4, and then finally we have 1, and then 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that one's being overlapped as well. And this foot we're going to draw facing down, and so it's going to be longer. And because of that, we're going to see more of the bones, and I'm just going to do the basic shape of the bones. I don't think there's any need to go through the names of these bones, but I'll just kind of do the basic shapes of them so you kind of get an idea what they look like. You have this kind of bigger bone here, and a smaller bone, kind of has like this, another bone, another bone. Right, so you have all those bones in there. We'll start with the larger big toe bone, and all these bones here, they all kind of come out to the same distance. Same with the hand bones, and the reason why that is these being the metatarsal bones. They're all kind of the same length. They're not very much different, and that's because the foot has a pretty the curve the foot has is pretty similar, unlike the hand. The pinky toes is not quite as small as the anyway. When you look at the hand, if you're drawing with skin, the toes begin only right about here. So, and with the hand, all this part right here is like where your knuckles start here. So this is where your fingers are, right? So just keep that in mind. So that's why these bones are so almost all the same length. Right, anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and go back a few steps here. So this bone, it kind of has a little bit big, and then it kind of goes thinner. We can't get, like I said, we can't get into too much detail because we're drawing so tiny, but we will get into more detail, like something like this. Then the next bone is kind of curved more and kind of fits onto it. And this will be like a knuckle, like so. Then that kind of has a part that kind of flanged out a little bit, like so. Then finally you have the bigger toe bone, which comes down. It's kind of shaped like this, which is what helps structure the actual shape of the toe itself. They kind of go, bigger and then smaller and then bigger again, but it's really hard to do that when I'm drawing this small. But don't worry, I will get into, like I said, I'll get into it more when we draw them larger. And finally we have this other one here, and the pinky one, which comes off like that. And so at this stage, all you want to remember is that it has 1, 2, 3, 4 parts, and this has 1, 2, 3. So memorize it like that from this front view and the down view. This is a foreshortened view, and this is facing down. And I think I might have drawn the feet a little bit big because I was zoomed in. So I have to reduce the size here in just a bit. Right, so this is the problem when you're drawing zoomed in like that without putting some guide. So what I should have done is drawn some guidelines before I started on the feet. And before I zoomed in, I should have drawn some guidelines, zoomed out with the full body view, and then zoomed in and drew the feet after, based on those guidelines. So let's see if that looks right. Something about like so. And I'm probably going to have to come in here and just like redraw some of this. And then take this foot here and bring it up here. Okay. All right, so now we have our skeletal structure. It's almost complete. So what you want to do now for your exercise is draw everything you have here from memory. Add the feet now. Draw from reference, draw from out reference, draw from reference, out reference, until you can add them on. They're pretty basic, it's just a couple little bones to memorize. But drawing the foot from different angles is when it gets complicated, and when we draw in more detail. But anyway, For this stage, it's pretty simple, I think. It's not that difficult to add that. Next, we want to add the rest of the ribs. Now, we're not going to draw all the ribs. Just know that the ribs, they're all attached to the sternum, and they all kind of come down and around and back like this, and they kind of all follow this shape like so. And but first we're going to draw the basic shape of the rib cage. And it's kind of important to know that the ribs, this piece of knowledge is important. They kind of come down, then they kind of come from the side view, they kind of come up, and they go back around and they attach to the spine. But first we're going to draw this basic shape. So you have this first rib here, which kind of comes up and goes back around, and it attaches to the spine. Right? So it kind of makes this, from the top view, it kind of makes a shape kind of like this. Right? And we'll do a top view too. The basic shape of the rib cage comes down to, like, if you want to think about just a little bit above the, like some target marks, it's just a little bit above the pelvis. So you want to come down like so, come down like so, and then from the sternum, all the ribs kind of come down. You kind of have a shape like this. So this is the basic shape of a rib cage. And honestly, that's really all you have to memorize when it comes to the skeletal structure. And just know, actually, the rib cage comes out a little bit further, especially with the male rib cage. It comes out a little bit further, like this, and then starts coming down. Female rib cage doesn't come out quite as far. The basic difference between the female skeletal structure and the male skeletal structure is the female skeletal structure, the whole thing is a little bit tinier. That's really about it. It's all thinner. That is, this part here is thinner. So the initial T you start out with is thinner because the shoulders aren't going to come out as far. The spinal cords may be a little bit thinner. The rib cage will be a little bit thinner. Bones are going to be a little bit thinner. Some women do have thick bones, so you got to keep that in mind. Not all women have thin bones, but one thing I wanted to kind of change here a little bit is I might want to come out a little bit farther with my pelvis, because this is a guy's pelvis bone. So, well, guys' hips are, well, anyway, a woman's pelvis bone is going to be a little bit bigger because their hips are a little bit bigger. But I still want to, this should come out a little bit further. I didn't come out quite far enough with it. It should be more like that. And there also is a little dip right here if this is something you want to memorize. So it's a little detail you can memorize now. And it kind of dips in like that. So if you want that dip to be there, you can put it there. And actually this one should be up higher like that. There you go. I can go ahead and erase some of these guidelines now. Like I said, we're not going to get into all the ribs, but just know that the ribs come around, attach to the spine, come around, attach to the spine, come around, attach to the spine. Then you have like a floating rib down here and here. Male and females do have the exact same amount of ribs, so don't think that they don't. You can check any medical book for that. It is true. So despite what you might believe because your pastor told you, it's untrue. They actually have the same amount of ribs. So yeah, the whole story where he took one of the ribs, obviously there's some misunderstanding there. I want to show the actual shape here more of the rib cage, because it kind of goes thin and then comes out and comes back down. So that's really the only shape you have to memorize right now, and you just add that onto your skeletal structure. And then when we're getting more into the muscles, we'll kind of draw a couple ribs just to show how they come back around, like from the side view, because it's kind of important with some of the muscles like the oblique. So. And notice for now we kept the skull structure very simple. It's kind of just the basic shape of the skull for now, basic shape of a head even. And we'll get more into the skull in a little bit. we'll deal with the skull separately and the hands and feet separately because they're kind of their own separate thing. But we're not going to go into tremendous amount of detail. Just enough detail to where you can master the skull from a couple of different views. And then, because the skulls, it's important to the head, but if you really want to get into the head, this is more of a figure course, advanced anatomy course for the figure. If you want to get more into the head, you want to get my head and it's called Master the Human Head and Faces course. That goes in more details, but still, I'll still cover kind of what I did there with the skull and then with the muscles, and that's about it. But if you want to know more about the head and master that, you definitely want to pick up that course. Right, so that's the skeletal structure from the front view. You want to memorize all of this now. So you should be able to draw this entire thing from your memory. The last little piece you need to add on there was the rib cage. Shouldn't take you very long to memorize that basic shape of the rib cage. And so go ahead and draw this entire skeletal structure now from reference a couple times to make sure it's all there, it's solid. And then draw the whole entire skeletal structure from memory. And then if you make any mistakes, check and verify it with the reference. Go back and draw it again from memory. Wait a few days, draw it again from memory. Just make sure it's solid before you move on to start, drawing the skeletal structure from different views. Just make sure that you have this mastered. You can draw what you see right now on the screen from memory. You can draw it confidently from memory. That is, you can like sit at the park with only a piece of paper, nothing else, no references with you, and you can draw this right here. And people are like, "Wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat that you're able to draw that like that." Some important parts to keep in mind is the femur bone comes in like this. You could even exaggerate it more if you want to. From the front view, you can take this femur bone and draw it in a little bit further, and then have these legs come down, straight down from there. I didn't exaggerate it too much, but you can exaggerate, especially for like a female. You can exaggerate it. The length of this and this are almost equal. It just depends on the person, but usually they're pretty equal. You memorize the space between the hip and the pelvis. There's not much space there, and I could probably maybe draw just a little bit more space between those two things, just to make it a little bit more accurate, like so. Memorize this space here. It's important that you have a lot of space between the jaw, the bottom of your chin, and the top of, not your sternum, but the manubrium, which is the part that attaches on top of the sternum right here. So between the manubrium and the chin, memorize that there's a decent amount of space there. It's about the space of the half of the skull. Take a note of how wide the shoulders are. That's something you definitely want to memorize. Not all shoulders are going to be this wide, especially for a skeletal structure. And in fact, I think I might have made it just a little bit wider than it needed to be. Then again, my skull is probably going to be a little bit wider too. So if I were to draw my skull more correctly here, as far as size goes, it might be a little thicker like that. But the width here is probably going to be more like here on a typical skeleton. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. I like drawing wide shoulder males, but when drawing a female, you definitely want to keep that thinner on your skeletal structure, and maybe even on your males, you might want to keep that thinner. So just keep that in mind. That's another space you want to memorize, and you might not want to go with the wider version like I did. You might want to go with the thinner version. But that part doesn't really matter. Even if you followed along with me exactly and you learned it wide, and that's how you've been drawing it, just like I've been drawing it, that's fine. If you want to make the adjustment, all you have to do is go, okay, when I draw it this time, I'm going to draw a little bit less space in between. That's how you get different kind of characters anyway when you're drawing figures. My rib cage is pretty wide as well. I don't have to have it this wide. I can come out, and make it a little bit thinner if I wanted to, and that would be fine as well. These are all little changes you can make once you master this front view. I don't know what happened right there. I drew some weird lines and messed all that up. Right, so there we go. This part here is really important to memorize. Particularly, it's important to memorize that the kneecap only slightly dips down into, so you have your femur bone. Right, so you have your femur bone, and your tibia bone, which is this bigger bone here, and they kind of connect and overlap each other. They fit on top of each other. So like remember, like I said, like two cylinders, and they kind of fit on top of each other like that. So you want to think about it in that three-dimensional way. And the kneecap fits right on top of more on the femur bone, and only slightly extends. The tip of it kind of folds over to the tibia. And this whole time I've been calling it kneecap. If you want to know the medical term, it's the patella. So that little bone is called the patella bone. I call it the kneecap, but patella is the actual medical name. So I told you I'd tell you all the medical names as we're going through stuff, so that's what it's called. Now you know. Knowing's half the battle. G.I. Joe. All right, so that's the end of this course, or not course, excuse me, the end of this lesson. So that was the mastering the front view of the skeletal structure. A bunch of exercises were needed to get you to this point. And if you really are diligent and you work at it, you can memorize how to draw this in a couple of days. It might take a couple of weeks, depends how much time you can put into it. So you really could go through this course quite quickly, but it's all up to you about how much time you can put into it and how much time you have to dedicate to it. But anyway, that's the end of this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll go through the back view, and then we'll go through the side view, and then we'll kind of zoom in on some bones and show what they look like from different angles, like and from different viewpoints if the arm's bent and things like that, because some of those things are important to know. And then finally, we'll get into the muscles. That's probably the part you're really waiting for. That's the fun part for me, is drawing the Scorchy figure. It's pretty cool. All right, so we'll get into that though. We'll get there quickly, hopefully. Actually, I lied. Sorry, that's not the very end of this particular lesson. I do want to just quickly show some of the differences between the male and female skeletal structure. So when you're drawing the hip bone, you have your spine that comes down, and the spine will be a little bit thinner on most females. When you draw the hip bone, think of it as the female hip bone is shaped more like this. It's wider, right? So it's shaped more like this. It's not shaped up so much like this, like the male bone, but her hips are shaped more like this. So her pelvis bone has a slightly different shape, where it comes out like that. Then it kind of comes in like this. And you can just kind of have that same kind of shape you had over there. And then from all this right here looks the same after that. It's just that top part that looks different. And it comes down, it has a bigger hole like this because they have to deliver babies. Okay. So it's that main difference that you want to memorize. And then, this all comes down the same. You have the same bones come down like that. That's all the same. And then the legs attached to the same area, which is here. They have the bigger bone. Comes out. This doesn't come out as much. It kind of just goes like this because the whole thing is kind of thinner because she's a female. And the bones kind of come in more like this. They kind of angle in more. So they kind of come out and angle in more. Also, it kind of comes like this. I need to make sure I draw this correctly for you. I'm trying to go fast because I don't want the course, the course to be like super duper long. And you'll be able to see why I'm drawing this more from the back view when we draw the back view. But it's kind of like that. So this makes it to where, and then the rib cage also is the other part you want to memorize the difference of. And it kind of is a lot thinner. Kind of comes up like this. Has a thinner top. Right, like so. So when you're drawing the female skeletal structure, this is thinner than the hips. So the hips come out a little bit thick, a little bit farther than the ribs stick out. And that gives when you put the skin on it, that's what gives the hourglass figure of the female body. The widest part being out here by her leg bones, not her hips. This is the bone that comes around and causes the little, you can see the little bones sticking out sometimes with some females. Then you have the crotch area and the legs. Anyway, so you get the idea. So that's what you want to memorize. That's really the only difference. The skull might be a little bit smaller, the width of the collarbone, and this is going to be a little bit smaller. And it's going to come down, and then you're going to have your arms and blah blah. and the leg. So that's the main part you need to memorize that's different. And so there's really no reason for me to go into drawing the entire skeletal structure for the female. You just need to know the differences, and that's it. Once you know those differences, then memorize them. So go ahead and now draw, since you can draw the entire male skeletal structure from the front view, now draw a female skeletal structure from the front view by simply making those slight alterations. Make your shoulders less wide, make the rib cage a lot thinner, and to where it's shaped like this. The pelvis, where it's not shaped like that, but shaped like this, where it comes out wider. All this right here is the same. So draw all that the same. Let me go ahead and show you. Draw all this right here the same. This is all the same. This is what's different. So the part that's in blue right here, that's what's different, which is shaped like that. And there you go. And do that a few times until you have it memorized. Now you can draw the female and male skeleton. Draw them both side by side, and that's something you can keep for your portfolio actually. So make sure that you have really nice drawings open for your portfolio. If you haven't done my if you want to do it in pencil, for example, for your portfolio, even no matter what you're drawing with, you want to be able to draw smoothly. And so you want to do the lessons. They're free. They're on my YouTube channel. Just type in like pencil techniques or something, and they should come up. Just search my channel for that, or just search my channel for pencil, and you should find my 2 pencil drawings. You'll see my hand because I'm actually drawing with the pencil, and it shows you the techniques of like drawing smooth lines and how to get them smooth. How to, like, okay, I'm gonna draw, say I'm gonna draw a leg, and you can just kind of smoothly draw. And what's cool about the technique of not lifting your pencil is you keep your pencil on the paper the whole time and never lift it up, and you kind of get some cool looking things that way. And then you draw lighter and darker lines where, once you feel like a line's, you're confident with it, then you draw that line, and you draw a little bit, stronger than the other lines, the lighter lines that you have there. And that's a really cool technique to do anyway. You want to be able to get really good at drawing your pencil lines. You want everything to look really smooth because you want to show in your portfolio that you can draw really smooth lines. If your portfolio, the sketches looks more like these lines here, that's not good. And I kind of went crazy there. So what I want to do is I think I actually want to have part of this. I want to have some of these differences, and I think I want to show them as part of a download of this course so that you can have the differences here. And so this part right here, I'm going to go in a little bit more detail here. This actually connects like this, and then this comes part of your spinal cord, or your spine, not spinal cord, sorry, I don't know why I keep saying that. Got to keep that kind of in the center. That comes down, it's the same as this over here. But all this, it's important that that's all there. Comes down. This is more the back view, and it kind of comes down to a point like that. You have the 2 bones that come right here. They kind of connect. Oops. Sorry, there's not much to say, so I'm just kind of... That goes behind and connects to the pelvis, comes out in the front. I do want to show the slight difference just in case you want to draw this. So I want anyone to be disappointed in the course, being like, how come we didn't go into a slightly little more detail with the female skeletal structure? So there you go. This is all the same up here as the male. So, matter of fact, it's not even, the sternum and stuff isn't really thinner. Keep in mind, it does come all the way down, and then that's where the ribs come off of, and they come around. They come around like that, and they come around the back, and they attach to the back of the spine. you have your collarbones, which come out here and here, same as the male. They kind of curve up more a little bit maybe, comes back around, kind of curves back around. You'll see this from other views, and connects to the scapula. The female scapulas come in more. They come down quite far as well, kind of come up. We'll draw them more for the back view too. I just want to kind of show that. Then you have the scapula here, which is where the socket of the arms are fit into, and that's all the same. So that's the thing, these are the parts you want to memorize that are different. It's mainly the hip, rib cage, and the wideness here. So go ahead and draw those details when you draw now your female from your memory, because you can draw this. If you can draw the male skeleton from your memory, you can now draw the female skeleton from memory. You just have to memorize these different parts. So for your exercise, go ahead and draw this from reference, draw this from reference, then draw it from memory, draw it from memory, until you can draw this little part here from memory, then draw the whole skeleton again and just apply this knowledge to it, and voila, you have a female skeleton. Sorry, this lesson went a bit longer than I thought it would, but there you go, that's the end of the lesson. We'll move on to the next one, the back view.